I learned I was transgender from Scooby-Doo.
Scooby-Dooby-Doo, where are you?
No, not that one. This one.
Like this is no time to...
Yes, the 2002 live-action adaptation where, spoiler, Scrappy-Doo turns out to be the villain. I loved this movie. It had everything. Monsters, goofy antics, Sarah Michelle Gellar, my childhood hero Velma, and good old-fashioned body swapping. Yep, good old-fashioned body swapping. Excuse me. Yes, good old body swapping. You see, at a certain point in the movie, the Scooby Gang gets a hold of a mystical device that causes them to change bodies. At one point, Fred ends up in Daphne's body. Wait a minute, sorry. I literally forgot until I made this video that Freddie Prinze Jr. played Fred. Jeez, that's really weird, yet oddly perfect. Anyways, Fred ends up in Daphne's body, and at one point he looks at himself in her body and says,
I can look at myself naked.
And there was 10-year-old me being like, why would you look at yourself naked? And then I went to the internet and I learned. Oh, wow, I learned. So yeah, Scooby-Doo caused me to learn all about sex. But there was much more to it than that. I found myself drawn back again and again to that scene. Not because I found Freddie Prinze Jr. being a creepo to be interesting, but because I was fascinated by the idea of being in a girl's body. I kept imagining it. Not in a creepy sex way, though I was a puberty-ridden teenager, so there was that part of it. But mostly because I really wanted to just be in a woman's body. I was so jealous of Fred in that scene because I desperately wished I could just magically transport myself into a woman's body too. As I got older, I started to do more research and learned more about being transgender. I started cross-dressing in my mom's clothes and all the typical parts of learning what being a trans woman is about, which I'll talk about in another video. But it all started with this idea of body swaps. I became obsessed with that idea of body swapping genders. I watched Freaky Friday, It's a Boy-Girl Thing, The Hot Chick, Ranma 1/2, that one episode of Star Trek the original series, and I know I'm not the only trans person who's done that. I've talked with so many trans people who became interested in this type of fiction. Heck, even my girlfriend vividly remembers an episode of Batman Beyond where Ra's al Ghul was stuck in his daughter's body. Yeah, that was an episode. That had to be strange for him as a father. So why are trans people obsessed with body swaps? One obvious reason is body swapping is fascinating to us is because we, well, want to swap bodies. While not every trans person identifies with the idea of being born in the wrong body, many of us, like myself, do or did have some level of body dysphoria, or distress caused by our bodies not matching how we see ourselves. Body swapping in fiction allowed us to imagine an easy, quick fix to this problem. Yet the other reason so many of us became obsessed with body swapping was because it's a convenient way to hide what you're really interested in. I was a sci-fi nerd as a kid, so no one was really looking at me twice when I watched a Scooby-Doo movie a lot. While I was focused on the body swapping, I could lie and say I was interested in other parts of the movie, or just the movie in general. If instead I had been watching obsessively a movie about trans people, I might have accidentally outed myself before I felt completely comfortable doing so. Not that I didn't try. I saw so many late-night documentaries that I had to sneak downstairs to watch about being transgender, but I had to hide that, whereas Scooby-Doo I could just watch out in the open. But also, body swapping was a form of transgender representation. Keep in mind, it's not a good one. Most body swapping storylines are rife with unconsenting body swapping, gender stereotype jokes, and patriarchal sexism. They also aren't about transgender people. They don't even touch upon what an actual day in the life of a transgender person is, or what issues a trans person may face, both mentally, physically, or societally. But it was a form of representation all the same, and that's why I was interested in it. Back in the 1990s and early 2000s when I was growing up, there wasn't a ton of trans representation, and almost none of that was positive. So many from my generation had to search for representation in the strangest of places, like Scooby-Doo. As a result, it caused us to have to hide our feelings and obsess over quick magical fixes that never really could happen, instead of being open about what was going on and actually working to make ourselves happier. While today there is slightly more transgender representation on places like YouTube and other platforms, and in some TV shows and movies, there really still isn't enough, especially in mainstream media, which means trans kids today still have to find their weird outlets for their feelings. It's why representation is important, that we have a way to express and understand our feelings in an open way that we understand, and help others understand as well because they've seen the representation. It's why works like Will and Grace, while problematic, were so important to helping gay culture in America. So please, fight for representation for trans people, and honestly, all people. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go watch the Scooby-Doo live-action sequel because I've never seen it, but I hope there's more body swapping. Or at least more Sarah Michelle Gellar. Ruby, Ruby, Ruby!